the roll call.
Thanks, Senator Boysko. I'm Chandler Vaughn. I'm new to the Broadband team, just joined this week and helping out Tamara and the rest of the group with the policy side of Broadband. So I'll quickly read a statement that I'm sure we've all heard before about virtual meetings. Due to the governor's declared state of emergency due to COVID-19, it is impractical and unsafe for the Broadband Advisory Council to assemble in a single location. So the council meeting will be held electronically by video conference, telephone options, pursuant to the 2020 amendments to the 2020 Appropriations Act. The purpose of the meeting is to discuss or transact the business statutorily required or necessary to continue operations of the Broadband Advisory Council and the discharge of its lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. The public is welcome to use the link and phone number options made available by staff to attend the meeting electronically. DHCD will make available a recording or transcript of the meeting on its website in accordance with the timeframes established in sections 2.2-3707 and 2.2-3701.1 of the Code of Virginia. Also, another thing before we do roll call, if anybody wants to sign up for public comment closer to the end of the meeting, please go ahead and drop your name in the comment box, and we'll call on you once we get to that portion of the meeting. Just another heads up, depending on how many folks sign up for public comment, we may have to limit the amount of time we give to public comment, but we'll let folks know how many minutes can be individually given and how many minutes as a whole we'll have for public comment when we get to that point in the meeting. So for roll call, Delegate Hurst. Delegate Hurst, I think I saw you earlier on. You there?
Sorry, I should have been ready to go. Hi, I'm here.
Great. Delegate Leftwich.
I'm here.
Great. Delegate Kryzak.
Kryzak.
Thank
Okay.
you.
You bet, Chandler.
Delegate Tyler, I think I heard you earlier.
Yes, I'm here.
Senator Hashmi.
She is stuck at another meeting. I've been corresponding with her, so she's not here.
Thank you. All right, Senator Boysko, I've got you down as well. Senator Lewis. I believe we'll have Senator Lewis joining us later on in the call. James Carr.
Here.
Christy Proctor. Christy, I think I heard you on the line a little bit earlier. Mike Kaiser.
See, I apologize. Can you hear me now?
Oh yeah, we're good. Yep.
Fantastic.
Mike Kaiser. All right. Ray Lemura.
Here.
Sorry, I'm here. I guess I have to press *6 to unmute.
Got it. Gotcha both. Thank you. Steve Sandy.
Yeah, I'm here.
Michael Culp.
I'm here.
Richard Skolman.
Stolman, I'm here.
Got you down. Secretary Ring.
I'm here, present.
Hey there. And Evan Feynman for Secretary Ball.
Here.
Gotcha. All right. That leaves us with a majority present and quorum.
Thank you so much, Chandler. I appreciate that. First, we're going to hear an update from the VITA, the Virginia Telecommunications Initiative, from Tamara Holmes. So, Tamara, if you'd like to get us started with that, certainly appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator Boysko. We actually need to approve the minutes from the last meeting first.
You are right. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from August 14th?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, or is there anyone who opposes? Let's do it that way. That might be easier. Is there anyone who opposes approval of the minutes from August 14th? Hearing none, I would say that it was unanimous.
We are going to need a voice vote on that.
Oh, we are?
Yes, ma'am. We'll go through the list quickly this time. Delegate Hurst.
Aye.
Delegate Leftwich. Delegate Leftwich.
Aye. Sorry about that.
No, you're good. You're good. Delegate Krizik.
Krizak.
Krizik.
You're getting closer. No, it's okay. Yes, I'm here. And I agree with it.
If
I'm
you're wrong, I had to by then. Tyler. Delegate Tyler.
Yes.
Senator Hashmi. Senator Hashmi.
She's not here with us.
Okay. Senator Boysko.
Yes, I approve.
Okay. Senator Lewis, have you joined the call? All right. James Carr.
Yes.
Christy Proctor.
Yes.
All right. Mike Kaiser.
Yes.
Ray Lemura.
Yes.
Steve Sandy.
Yes.
Michael Colt.
Yes.
Richard Skolman.
Stillman, yes.
Secretary Ring.
Yes.
And Evan Feynman for Secretary Ball.
Aye.
Got it. Thank you all for that. The ayes have it, Senator Boysko.
Looks like she might have frozen.
I'll try texting her.
Do we want to hand it off to Vice Chair Tyler in the meantime? Because I think we're just introducing some presentations.
Yes, Delegate Tyler, if you want to, I mean, you're going to introduce me to go over the VITA update. So if you want me to, if we want to wait for Senator Boysko to join back, I can wait. Or if Delegate Tyler wants to proceed, I just text her as well.
Okay, I can go on and get started. If she's not, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I can go on and just start, and then she can just pop right back in.
Okay.
Okay, and I believe we just did the consent agenda. The next item on the agenda is the Virginia Telecommunications Initiative update, and that's by Dr. Holmes.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Chandler, do you have my slides?
Go right ahead.
Okay.
Yes. Can you see him on your screen?
They're coming up now. Okay.
Great.
All right. Chandler, can you click on, yep, there you go. Perfect.
Great.
All right. So if you can go to the next slide, Chandler. All right. So just to give you an update on the Virginia Telecommunications Initiative, as you all know, our budget is proposed to move to $49.7 million. As we discussed at the August meeting, we received 45 applications representing 53 localities, requesting $105 million in funding. And since our August meeting, we received 14 challenges for 13 applications. And our next slide just kind of gives you an update on next steps. So next steps, the VITA team, yes.
This is Delegate Krizak. What's the challenge? I'm sorry, I didn't, just sorry to interrupt you, but what does a challenge mean? That's not an application, right? That's
So in the VITA program, we allow for incumbent providers or any providers that may have received state or federal funding in an area that's been proposed for a VITA project to challenge an application. So out of the 45 applications we received, 14 of those were challenged. Well, 13 of those were challenged.
is that kind of normal? Is that the normal ratio?
For the last 2 years, we've on average had about between 14 and 15. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt. Thank you.
Oh, no problem. Not at all. So we did, as I said earlier, we received 14 challenges, challenging 13 projects. And what we do with the challenge information, we determine if a challenge is valid or invalid based on documentation provided by both the company that's challenging the project, as well as the locality and their co-applicant partner can submit a rebuttal. And what we're currently doing at this point, based on what we received for the challenge as well as the rebuttal, we're in the process of rescoping projects. So in the case where there was an application and an area was submitted, and in the VITA program, if you all remember, we don't allow more than a 10% overlap with existing service or planned service. So in most cases, both the challenger and the applicant and their co-applicant partner may have agreed that there was an overlap based on what was proposed in the project, and that we would remove that area that's been overlapped, that as an overlap. So we're in the process of rescoping those projects and rescoring those applications so they can be reevaluated. And then the second piece is we're currently waiting for results from the Federal Communication Commission's Rural Digital Opportunity Fund auction, which is known as RDOF. And that bid process just started on October 29th. And in our current guidelines, we will make adjustments to applications that came in if any of the areas that were up for bid, because sometimes there's an overlap, there may be an overlap between a proposed project and then the area that also went out for bid. So we're waiting to hear back from those bid announcements from the FCC, which my understanding is that they'll be doing an ongoing awarding of bids to see if there's an overlap so that we're not potentially funding a VITA project that also received RDOF. So we'll be rescoping those projects as well, depending on the outcome of the RDOF auction. So those are our next steps. And then we'll update you again at our December meeting where we stand with the challenges. And hopefully by that point, we would have heard back from the RDOF auction as well. Does anyone have any questions regarding the VITA update? All right.
Okay, are there any questions for Tamara?
Dr. Holmes, this is Steve Sandy. Do you have an anticipated date for approval of projects?
Steve, we're still on the schedule of what we anticipate will be hopefully early December, maybe mid-December. So we're still on schedule based on where we're at with the challenges. We're hoping that the RDOF schedule will not deviate from what they originally had planned so that we can stay on schedule. We do have to wait till the RDOF auction is completed.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, are there any other questions? Has the chair got back online?
She's trying to do it by phone now. Believe it or not, her internet's down.
I know that feeling. Okay. If not, we can continue on until she pops on. The next item on the agenda is the discussion overview by Eric Johnston and Evan Feynman.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. This is Eric Johnson. I serve as the Director at the Department of Housing and Community Development. Good to see everyone on the call here. I want to first say we're just really thankful and excited as an agency to the General Assembly and the Governor for exponentially increasing the amount of funding available for last mile broadband deployment. Tamara went over that in the presentation of the going from 19 million to 49.7 million in this special session here. That is a historic increase, and we're just very grateful for that. So we appreciate the leadership of the General Assembly and Governor in a bipartisan way to increase that funding. What I and Evan, the Governor's Chief Broadband Advisor, are going to cover is the main component of the agenda today regarding just an overview of the budget language. And Tamara, if you can go ahead or Chandler, advance that slide that talks about the Broadband Advisory Council. You can see on your screen updating the Virginia Telecommunications Initiative. I'm so sorry. The Broadband Advisory Council shall assess updating the Virginia Telecommunications Initiative to allow for public broadband authorities to apply directly for VITA funds without investment from the private sector. DHCD, on behalf of the council, shall submit feedback on the potential impacts of this policy change to the chairs of the House Appropriations and Senate Finance and Appropriations Committees on or before the start of the 2021 General Assembly session. So that's the language pulled from the conference agreement budget, and the agenda today has 3 models of what localities are doing in the broadband space right now, and so you're going to get a chance to hear an overview of that. I think in preparation, just setting some context for that assessment and your work as a council to evaluate and to dig into this issue. A couple things I'll say is that we as DHCD, we are committed to, this is a highly successful program, and we are committed to operating it in whatever way you deem on this particular part of the issue. And so what we will be doing is making sure you have all the information accessible to you to evaluate this very budget language. And really, you will have a couple options available as a council in how you go about what you want that final assessment and feedback to the chairs of the money committees to look like. And really, there's a couple options. You can keep the program as it is right now in terms of this component related to the eligibility. You can also make some changes to allow local governments to apply without a private sector partner. And there's specific code language in the budget right now requiring that public-private sector partnership in these applications. If you choose to allow or recommend allowing that, there are different caveats you may want to look at on this issue. Things like whether you want to have a set aside of dollars, whether there want to be, how you'd want to look at experience, and how you want to look at that ownership structure, and what that would particularly look like. I think the point right now is not to begin that discussion, it's to set the context of what's ahead for the council, to hear from different local government examples of how they partner or have their own municipal broadband, and then hear from the council, hear the public comment, and weigh the issues together. And we as DHCD are committed to providing whatever assistance and information to give you that information. So there is a meeting scheduled also for December 4th. And I'm sure we'll talk about that more, but there will be an opportunity at that point for you all to give that direction to the DHCD and what you'd want us to submit to the money committees. The other thing I think is important that I'll let you know is we will also follow up with a related request that we received from the chair of the House County Cities and Towns Committee, Chair Corey, who had asked us to, as an agency, to look at just the authorities of municipalities in terms of their ability and authorizing language in the code on their broadband efforts in general. So we have just completed that, and so we will definitely ensure that you have that analysis coming up before you get to that December 4th meeting. But that's separate. That's just an analysis of what the existing authorities in the code are. This particular effort is really focused on looking at what the impacts would be of changing the current budget language in terms of who can be the applicants for the Virginia Telecommunications Initiative grant program. So with that, want to turn it over to Evan Feynman, the governor's chief broadband advisor, to see if he has some additional comments on this process.
Sure. Thanks, Eric. I think that was a really good overview. To put it in the context, to put the question before you in context relative to the governor's goal of universal coverage and the overall landscape, Virginia currently has relatively few municipal broadband providers that could take advantage of inclusion in the VITA program. Straightforwardly, we can accomplish universal broadband coverage making a change and permitting localities to apply to VITA without a private sector partner, and we can accomplish universal coverage without making that change and proceeding as we have. When you think about the digital divide, we really think about two big categories. The first is the access problem, which is the question of whether or not there's infrastructure at the home or business adequate to get folks online. And the second is the affordability question, which is exactly what it sounds like, whether or not the customer can afford to take service. The same basic problem on the infrastructure side that has prevented the private sector from reaching some of our very dispersed populations when population density is quite low on a per square mile basis will also exist for municipal broadband providers, which is that it just costs a heck of a lot to build this infrastructure out to those areas, and the amount of revenue you can gain thereby is very limited. So at the end of the day, I think on the affordability side, I think there's a lot more applicability for municipal broadband provision, particularly when you think about, low income and affordable housing units. On the access side of the equation, which is really, we should always remember the portion of this problem that VITA is specifically designed to solve. There is less applicability, not no applicability, but less applicability for municipal providers. That said, there is some, and there's good arguments on both sides of this question. The governor doesn't currently have a position. I suspect if there were legislation to this effect, we'd need to come up with one. But in the meantime, I just wanted to be really clear that, we can get this done either way. It's more a question of how and what the nature of that is. And I also didn't want, I think there's a lot of conversation that municipal broadband is a panacea. It is not. There are some specific situations in which it's the right approach, and some specific situations in which it's not. And those, we can come down on either side of this divide and still get the goal of universal coverage accomplished.
Yeah, Evan, this is Delegate Krisak.
Hey, Delegate.
Hey, I just wanted to ask, so to kind of drill down a little bit on what you said regarding Virginia having few municipalities that could actually take advantage of VITA. Do you mean take advantage of it if the language changed, or do you mean currently?
Well, I couldn't say who might stand up municipal providers in the future, but currently there are very few, really only a handful that are ready to do, or even in the short term could do, last mile customer facing provision of service, by which I mean, in the same way you contact your electric co-op or Comcast or All Points Broadband or whomever and say, I'd like to sign up, and they, somebody with that logo on the truck shows up at your house, gets you connected, they're who you pay the bills to. There's just very, very few. Really, Eastern Shore Virginia Broadband Authority and the Roanoke Valley Broadband Authority are the only ones that are without connection to a municipal electrical provider that are really doing that now on any kind of scale. Further, since VITA is designed to only focus on people that are unserved by infrastructure currently, I think the the Roanoke Valley Broadband Authority, which primarily operates, in the city and immediate suburbs of Roanoke, doesn't have a ton of network right now that is adjacent to unserved areas unserved by infrastructure. Not true on the Eastern Shore. There is still a lot of work to be done out there. Eric also highlighted a question that we would have to deal with, which is we currently right now, in the interest of good stewardship, don't allow new providers to apply for VITA unless they have really demonstrated some very serious capacity. And the reason for that is just that a startup is risky. And so we would need to figure out how to deal with, if a county were to stand up a municipal provider, how do we kind of certify that they're ready for prime time in year one? Or do we say, as we do with other providers, get in service, be in operation for a couple of years, and after you've got a track record, we'll make you eligible for this. That's on the implementation side. So that would be after we made a decision, and if we made the decision to permit application without a private sector partner.
Yeah, thank you. Those echo my concerns too. You obviously need a group that has the expertise and experience. And also it needs to be somewhere where they're doing that last mile. If there's already a lot of providers out there and there's no one new or folks that don't have the connection, then why is a municipality getting involved at all? Does it make sense? So that helps a lot. Thanks. It'll be interesting to hear from the groups, from the municipalities.
Madam Vice Chair, I know that Chair Boysko had asked, once Evan and I gave that discussion overview setting, to then turn it to Dr. Holmes to introduce and go through the three models of local government involvement in broadband, and then open it up for discussion and questions along the way, because it dives deep into more of what Evan just described and the good question that Delegate Prizek had. So does that work for you to then turn it to Dr. Holmes to go through the?
Yes, that'd be fine. And I think the chairman is back on the line as well. So Dr. Holmes can continue, and then the chair can come back on and take charge of the meeting. Go right ahead.
Great. Thank you both.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speakers, and I'm going to introduce all three of them at one time, and then I'm going to ask them to follow one another as each one wraps up their presentation. And Chandler has your slides, and he will be presenting them and advancing them as you speak. So just remind him to change the slides. And then at that point, once we conclude, we will open it up for questions. As just a reminder, presenters, you have up to 10 minutes to each present your slides. And then just a reminder for any new folks that have joined the call since we started, if you're interested in speaking during the public comment period, please put your name in the chat box. And when we turn the meeting back over to Senator Boysko and to Chandler, they will call on speakers that are interested in speaking. And I do know that someone from the town of Ashland had joined us. They had originally submitted a letter. So if someone from the town of Ashland would like to present their letter, please put your name in the chat box, and we will make sure that you all are called upon during the public comment period. So at this time, I'm going to start off with Michael Culp from Albemarle County to discuss the public-private partnership. And then he will be followed by Frank Smith from Roanoke Valley Broadband Authority and Jason Gray from the City of Danville Utilities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Holmes, and it's an honor to speak to the Broadband Advisory Council on the Albemarle Broadband Authority's partnerships. We've been working together since 2017, and this survey that you see is available in Latin version as well as the English version. So we've done a really good job of getting out to the community in general and getting lots of feedback on the power of being able to get direct support, direct info from our citizens. Next slide. Thank you, Chandler. Thank you for doing this. So just a little bit of history. We've been working on this particular issue for a while. One of the great things that happened, DHCD awarded us a $75,000 broadband planning grant, which is a great program for smaller localities that are just starting up and getting things going. So we delivered our initial broadband strategies plan. All the while we were getting some Connect America funding support. So things were moving, but not very fast. So next slide. 2017 comes along and we had to make a decision. And it was basically, are we going to go the route of trying to build a network and being responsible for fixing all the fiber breaks, doing all the work that has to coincide with that, you know, hiring our own trucks and building our own infrastructure. And at that point, we didn't want to do it solo. We really felt that the best way to go was to partner with numerous ISPs, as many as would come to see us. So we kind of built a categorization and did some analysis and ended up figuring out that the best way to go would be to directly partner. So our goal in the charter for the Broadband Authority clearly delineates that we are here to partner, not to build or operate or compete with ISPs. Now, that's not to say that we're not looking at other ways all the time. So if something comes up that makes it more favorable to provide a middle mile network or to build our own network, that's a possibility that's still out there, but it would require action probably at the Board of Supervisors level. So next slide. Thank you, Chandler. So what happened with us, our partnership sort of bear fruit. I think it did a great job, and we're thankful for the Virginia Telecommunication Initiative because that's really what happened with us. We've successfully partnered with CenturyLink, now Lumen, Comcast, and Civic Firefly. So over the years, you can see we've partnered with 3 specific ISPs. Next slide. And things are continuing to move. I know I'm going fast here, but there's a lot of, you can go back and look at the PDF that was sent out, but there's a lot of things that are happening because of that competition, that level setting of we need to bring more people in. So essentially with the pandemic, things shifted and we were seeing a lot more competitive nature coming from other ISPs. So we now have a relationship with Nelson Cable, which is a smaller ISP, mostly dealing in Wintergreen and Nelson County, but they also have some legacy coax in the southern part of Albemarle. So we're working a partnership with them. And then Chantel over in Edinburgh now has a relationship with us through the school division that is providing a new fixed wireless service. So as you can see, we have a lot of partnerships going on, and it's really, really driving some forward motion through the partnership model. Our next big step is to go after the digital equity issue. We see that a lot. I think Holly Hartel was on earlier. She did a great job with her presentation at VACO. We're trying to model a similar program in Albemarle County to get things out there to people. And now I just want to bring up a little bit of a genuine concern that has come to our knowledge, and that is the ability of using the electrical infrastructure. I think there's a true opportunity now. I mean, we've partnered with Civic Firefly and done some really great work, and we feel like there's some other opportunities. In Albemarle County, we have 4 electricity providers. We have Rappahannock Electric Co-op, we have Appalachian Power, we have Dominion Power, and we have CVEC. All of these electricity providers should be focused on providing fiber broadband to wherever there is an electric hookup. So if you're building a barn or redoing a barn, you should have fiber drawn to it. If you're putting in an elementary school, or you've got an elementary school that's only on old copper or some other way connecting to the internet, because I'm an electricity provider in Virginia, I have an obligation to make sure that that elementary school has fiber connectivity. Lots of other things coming up there. It really seems to be the right thing to do. One thing that I would suggest to Dominion and others is, as they're looking at their strategic underground projects, things like that, they should consider restructuring their crews so that fiber and conduit is part of the process, not an add-on. So if you're going out and you're going to take poles down, let's put some conduit and put some fiber in the ground. It just seems so logical to me, but I'm really hopeful that, looking at the electricity providers as a genuine partner, the Commonwealth will move much faster toward the universal broadband goal. And that's it for me. Thank you for the time. I'll stay on to answer any questions. Appreciate it. Thank you, Dr. Holmes. Thank you, Chandler. Who's next?
It's Frank Smith from Roanoke Valley.
That's great. Thank you, Dr. Holmes. Thank you, Chairman Bosco, and thank you for the committee for inviting us. I've got to know several years, both in the General Assembly. When I took this job, almost, I think I'm in my 6th year.
Hey, Frank, you're a little tough to hear.
All right. Is that a little bit better?
Yeah, I'd try and get as close to the mic as possible. Otherwise, I'm trying to find another mic.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, a little bit better. Yeah,
Okay, I'll speak loud. So I appreciate, thank you for taking the time to allow us to present today. I've got to know some of you over the past couple of years. When I came out of the private sector 6 years ago, helped build this. Our goal today is to talk about who we are, what we're doing, and maybe also separate a little bit of the wheat from the chaff on some of the things that are kind of floating out there. So let's go ahead and start. Next slide, please. So we were actually formed when it came to community leaders here. The leaders, the elected, the citizens, the business community, and the local folks said, we need something that's different here. We're not being served properly from a competitive standpoint. So this was interesting. So on my board, I've got Roanoke City, the County of Roanoke, City of Salem, Botetourt County, also the citizen member who's the executive director of the Water Authority, and we're now adding on the senior vice president and CIO for Virginia Tech, and also the senior vice president and CIO for Curling Clinic, which is the 4th largest medical system provider in the state. So the key thing is we had early adopters. This was created by the folks in the community because we had needs. And we really appreciate it. It's been a great joint effort, and we've been able to add both the enterprise side, the education side, the nonprofit side, and the medical as far as being part of it. And in addition to that, we'll talk a little bit later, we've now developed good partnerships with new carriers that have been riding on our network and also existing carriers. So the model's been changing as we've gone forward, but it's been a good run. Next slide, please. So it's really simple what we're trying to do. The key thing is we want access to better services. And I'll use this as a quick analogy. Before I got into this several years ago, I'm an elder at my church. It's a large Presbyterian church. One of the founders there is actually sold his division, his company to GE Digital, which is headquartered, one of their locations is here in Roanoke. And he said, Frank, let's go take a look at what we can get as far as a 1 gig service, just an example, within the city or within Roanoke County. So I priced it and came out and said it was a $10,000 construction bill. Looking back at it now, that probably was pretty reasonable. But it was $10,000 a month for the circuit. Since before we broke ground, we saw prices come down 10, 15, and 20%. Then we saw after we were done, 30 to 35%. But the key thing is people wanted access, they wanted competition, and more importantly, they wanted choice. So we saw the access go up, we saw prices come down, and more importantly, we have other carriers who are partnering with us, but also coming into the area that are driving innovation and change. And it's just not specifically within the urban core, because if you look at our map, I think there's some miscommunication there, I should say misinterpretations. The Regional Planning Commission, we sit in District 5 or Planning District 5. If you go out a 30-mile radius, we're about 350,000 people. We still have more trees than we do people, but a great area to live. But we got that information along with the Regional Planning Commission, the Economic Development Team. And so we have a 25% suburban urban core. 75% of it is rural. So we'll come back to that. Let's go on to the next slide, please. So some of the things we've been doing to address this as far as the infrastructure and serving the community, because for us, like everybody else here on the call, we're public servants, we're stewards. We're there to serve our generation and future generations to come. So one thing that we did, because on my team, we have a small, but I call it a nimble team, we're all experienced telecommunications professionals, both on the operations side, business development, networking, and things like that. And we've also partnered with those. The network that we built, we like to say, is 100% carrier grade, which means it's an actual real service provider network. And we run it that way because we have pride of ownership. And our customers, whether they be education, finance, and other types of enterprise government, they should not be accept anything less. And that's been good. We've worked well together. But we've attracted different sectors. The other thing too is that we actually provide 24/7 local network service. And we have service level agreements, we respond correctly. Now the network's been in production now in its 5th year. The track record is good. We maintain customers, but more importantly, we're attracting customers because we're differentiating a simple thing, customer service, actually understanding who we are and what we're doing, and listening to what their needs are. Because we're not here just to flog a circuit or sell a circuit. There's nothing wrong with that, but you need to listen to what's going on in the community. We're here to make a difference. And I think an example of that is specifically Feeding America Southwest. They're a partner of ours. They're just not a customer, but they're a partner because of what they do in helping those folks who are basically food insecure. And these are things that we look at a little bit differently as far as our mission. But we also, at the same time, run it responsibly because we're stores. The last thing, which has been interesting, and over our course, some of us here think what we're doing is great. Some of what I call, as the Brits would say, are a loyal and dedicated opposition from a political standpoint. That's the great society we live in, and we can also agree to disagree. But the one thing that we've done to keep off the table any issues is that we have just completed our 5th year of audits. I am not an accountant by background. I'm a guy from Washington with a degree in public policy, ended up in telecom. And I'm really dangerous. But when it comes to finance, I don't mess around, and we don't, because again, we're stores, we're public stores. And so as part of that, each of our audits have been, and I was not familiar with this term when I first started that much, but each audit that we have had has been a non-qualified audit, which means the audits are right on the money and they're perfect. And matter of fact, some of you all take advantage of our transparency because everything that we do is on our website, all our financials, everything else, we do it. Because again, we're engaged with the community and we're there to serve and make them understand the work that we're doing and how important it is for what we're trying to get done for them and the future generations here in the Roanoke Valley. Next slide, please. So the status, and this has been interesting, there's been some comments. We have over 100 miles of backbone, fiber backbone throughout the area. As a matter of fact, it's just not within the city core, but it's also in suburban, and we're expanding into the rural areas. So this has been going on, and it's been good. So I think there's some good synergies here as we take a look at having an opportunity to be able to serve the important mission of the governor and his staff. We think it's a great idea for universal service and getting them out the door, because it really is important for our ability to be able to compete. And we want to make sure that we're a partner. In addition, also, we've been able to increase competition. Faster speeds, lower costs, better coverage. Very straightforward, but really important. The other thing to think about this, too, the status is that when we first started, some of the carriers thought that we were going to try to eat their lunch. That wasn't the purpose. We were here to drive competition. 5+ years later, we've been working on this in our team and great support from the community and from members of the General Assembly. We have 8 different carriers who are riding our network. 4 existing carriers, incumbent carriers, established carriers are working with us. They're using us to get to places where they can't get to. So that's a pretty good partnership. The second half of that is we have 4 brand new carriers who are serving both the rural area and also the suburban urban core. So we have 8. We're proud of that, but that's not proud. We're thankful that we're seen as an asset in the community to make a difference. And I think this is what this whole program is about. VITA and everything else that's been done by the government, which is extremely important. We're there to make a difference as a team working together. The next thing is increased infrastructure. So when we built the network, we want to make sure we had the proper coverage. So we have 9, what they call 9 switching centers of location where we have equipment. We've also brought in what they call 3 co-location centers. So one's in the northern part of our serving area, one's at Blue Ridge PBS, and the other's going to be out in the Spring Hollow Reservoir facility. And what this does, it lets both government, education, public safety be able to take advantage of making sure they have places where they can recover or have redundant services that help them in case of an outage. We're approximately 3.5 hours, depending on how fast you drive, from Washington Dulles. I used to live up in DC and Dallas, spent a lot of time up in the Beltway and metro areas. Obviously, many of you know Ashburn is a big data farm, data center farm. There's a lot of data centers. Richmond's done a great job too. We don't necessarily have we don't have that as much down here. And so one of the things we want to make sure is we're serving that we're having places where people can connect to us. But it's just not connecting for the urban and suburban poor. It's also being able to take that and help serve rural areas, small banks, schools, public safety centers. That's an important thing. And then the last thing is enterprise clients, working across the different verticals. We continue to expand, but more importantly, we're changing the game, but just not that. We're here to serve. So it's important for us to be able to serve the whole community. We're not targeted at a particular sector. We're here to make sure that all boats rise at the same time. I think from a public policy standpoint, that's one of the things that's important about broadband as we go forward. I think we all can agree that we're in this together and we want everybody to be able to succeed. So let's go on to the last slide, please. Well, actually, second to last, I should say. Just a real quick, as far as if you're not familiar with broadband or some of the things, we provide 3 essential services. Dark fiber or dumb glass. Please don't say that too fast because that could be embarrassing. But the fact is, dark fiber is glass doesn't have any lasers or optics on it. A lot of the carriers work with us and they use our dark fiber along with other partners because nobody can be everywhere. And that's why it's important to partner or work together. So as we expand our network, that helps everybody within the community. The second thing is transport. That's being able to get data from A to B. Very simple. The other is internet. We're actually a registered internet service provider. We sell do business to business, which means we actually do carrier wholesale. A carrier could buy from us, which they're doing right now. Or if we need to, we can provide direct access if it's required. And we've done that in the government education and the healthcare side and the enterprise side. So the key thing is if we couldn't do proper work, we wouldn't be able to offer these services. And we should be put out of business. I think that, and I said that when I first started, that's the key. We've got to be able to be here to serve and serve well. And we're a smaller town. If there's a problem, I have no place to hide. So maybe I'll move to Richmond. The next slide, please. So really, there's been a lot of discussion. There's been a lot of interesting things that have been popping up as from a public policy standpoint on this. Putting my old political hat on. And it's the simple for us is don't create artificial swim lanes. Get rid of artificial barriers. Let people like ourselves be able to at least apply. We don't have to be selected, but let all boats rise. Let all boats be able to share the tide. Then if they make it to their goal, that's up to them or in cooperation. So I think in closing, I just want to thank everybody for their time. I've enjoyed getting to know members of the General Assembly. That was not my area of expertise. I was more on the technical business development side. But over the past couple of years, it's been really interesting, and I'm really pleased with the commitment at all levels, both on the executive branch side and the governor's team, and also with the General Assembly, have made as far as supporting broadband, because we just don't compete amongst ourselves, but obviously we're competing against other localities. And this is also about economic development, regardless of whether it's rural, suburban, or urban. So thank you very much, and I appreciate everybody's time.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
This is Delegate Krizak. I have a quick question for Mr. Smith.
Go ahead, Mr. Krizak.
Thanks. Frank, I was looking at your website while you were presenting, just checking out on your transparency, and I know that you don't actually have your audits on there except for the 2016 audit. And I would, in full transparency, I would definitely put your last 3 audits on there. I know I run a nonprofit, and I have my last 3 990s, the last 3 audits. I think you need to update the website.
Well, I will, because they were supposed to be up there, and they have been up there. So we'll take care of that promptly. That's a good catch. Thank you.
You bet.
Glad to do it.
Are there this is Jennifer Boyce. So are there other questions before we move on to the next speaker?
Yeah, Madam Chair, this is Jimmy Carr. Frank, thanks for that presentation. Now that you all have been around for 5 years and I've seen this network developing, I wonder, could you give us some idea of what the revenue mix is in terms of sales to, wholesale sales to carriers versus your enterprise and other clients, and kind of, what's the size and the top line revenue of the organization at this point?
You're on mute.
All right, can you hear me now? There we go. Thanks for the bad Verizon. Sorry. So, yeah, as far as top line revenue for us, we started from zero and actually negative because we had built the network from scratch. So right now we've been on track every year. We just completed our last fiscal year. We are on track right now for this year to be around 900K as far as top line revenue. And actually that's part of our pro forma, and we started that from the beginning. And so the mix right now for us, without getting into too many details on it, specifically, it's probably closer to a 60-40 enterprise. But right now, we're turning it as we go forward. We're looking closer probably to around 40-60, the other ones. So enterprise 40, and then we're seeing that the carrier plus the partner side is increasing to around 70%. But at the same time, our customers are growing, and so is our embedded base. So it really depends on how you slice and dice the numbers. The good thing is we're on track. We've been making our numbers. We're bringing on new customers, and we're keeping the network up.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Are there other questions? Hearing none, we'll go on to Jason Gray, the Municipal Open Access Network from the City of Danville Utilities.
All right, good afternoon, and thank you for the invitation to present today and tell the City of Danville's story about in Danville. My name is Jason Gray. I'm the Director of Utilities for the city. Next slide, please. A little history about Danville Utilities. We've been in the utility business since 1876. We've been originally formed with our gas system in April of 1876. That's a typo. It's not natural gas. It's just regular gas. A lot of our street lights back then were gas powered. We are one of the oldest municipal utilities in the country. Our electric division was formed in 1886. We are governed by our city council, and we have a utility commission that's an advisory board to city council. Next slide, please. It's very rare we have all the essential services: electricity, natural gas, water, wastewater, and telecommunications. We have an operating budget of over 170 million, 130 full-time employees across all 5 divisions. Next slide. We serve more than just the city limits of the city of Danville. Our water and wastewater systems are only for the city of Danville. We do sell water to Pittsylvania County, our neighboring county, and to our neighboring county in North Carolina. Our electric service by far is covering parts of 3 counties: Henry County, Halifax County, Pittsylvania County. The city of Danville is approximately 60 square miles, but our electric territory is over 500 square miles. We do service natural gas to customers in Pittsylvania County outside of our city limits, and we tend to grow. We're looking to grow that service to make it more available for our rural customers. Next slide, please. Our broadband dilemma. Back in 2003, the city was in a run-in, economic development run-in for a data center. We have the electric utility But we found that back then we lacked significant capacity, broadband capacity, to be able to serve a large user like a data center. So city leaders, city staff formed the Danville network in 2004, not only for economic development, but for also educational reasons. Especially today, during COVID times, online education, having access to good broadband is very essential. Having access to multi-megabit connectivity or even gigabit connectivity was rare 15 years ago in Danville, and probably a good portion of Virginia. Over time, that's improved, but fiber to the home is very expensive, as most people know. Estimated installation is around $1,800 per household. So we don't tend to look to raise rates in Danville, tax rates or electric rates to help subsidize that. Each one of our utilities is its own enterprise fund and looks to be self-sufficient and not cross-subsidized to help supply revenue for a neighboring utility fund. Next slide, please. Our operating principle has been the same since the beginning. Danville, we want all of our businesses and households to have the same affordable broadband services and capacity that is available anywhere else in Virginia, Northern Virginia or Tidewater or anywhere else in Virginia. Not only for entertainment and health reasons, but for educational and economic reasons. And it's very simple as that. We just want to be at the same level as all of our neighbors. Next slide, please. Kind of give you that idea of the kind of capacity that we can provide through our Danville network. We can certainly today provide at least the 1 gigabit circle there. When we started providing broadband, some of our incumbent providers were offering T1 level, 1.5 megabit cable modem services. Those are the much smaller level circles, but they have grown over time as newer technologies have evolved. As newer technologies grow on our end, I look for us to be able to supply not only gigabit to the home, but maybe even 10 gig or 100 gig in the future. Technology's advancing and the costs are coming down as well. Next slide, please. So what roles should the city take in providing broadband? Many cities or towns in other states have taken the lead of being the internet provider. We chose not to do that. We chose to partner with private sector internet providers to provide telecommunication services, using our right-of-way, using our electric assets, our poles, our underground easements to be able to provide service to homes, but not to provide direct retail services to individual businesses or residential customers. So the city will never provide internet service to a commercial business or to a household. We will partner with a very qualified private sector internet service provider and partner with them in taking a revenue share approach and sharing the responsibility, cost, and revenue of providing that service to that customer to stimulate market competition and encourage private investment. We've always encouraged more and more providers to join in Danville. It's an open access network that allows multiple providers to offer their services on an equal platform, and it reduces the exposure of overbuilding infrastructure. Instead of having multiple attachments on our poles, we have one attachment for a common utility, if you will. Next slide. A little more about our history. We started in 2004. The network was built physically in 2003. We started serving ourselves in 2004, fiber to the government, fiber to the schools. We use the E-rate revenue from service provided to our city schools to further expand the network. We look to wire our industrial parks for economic development reasons. That was very successful. Our hospitals, our university, our community college. Approximately 2012, we started dabbling in the fiber to the home area, partnering with local internet providers. That has gone very well. We've always used revenue from the prior year to gauge how big our capital projects will be the next year. We have never borrowed money for capital fiber to the home projects, and we don't tend to look to borrow money. We look to use revenues generated from the sale of services. Currently today, we've passed over 4,000 customers with access to fiber to the home. I would estimate that we have between 500 and 600 currently connected. We serve a good portion of our river district, which is condominiums and apartments. So they've been also have very high speed access to broadband and other arrays of IPTV and additional security. Our police department has approximately 200 cameras funded through police grants in our downtown area. Our downtown it's flourished over the years, and Danville has been a part of that with the police department. Next slide, please. Just to recap a little bit about Danville, we are open access multi-service network. We offer more than just internet. We offer TV, internet, telephone, whatever the service may be. We do maintain the fiber cables ourselves. So if we have a car accident that damages a cable, we will work with our crews, contractors to fix that cable on an emergency basis. We provide the equipment to the house. So we actually provide the equipment that goes inside the house. We do not provide the TV boxes. That is the private sector internet provider's job to provide the set-top boxes. Our core ring is a 10 gigabit ring that is expandable as needed. We do not offer retail services. That's the private sector's position, but we do ask for a revenue share based on their success. So that they don't pay us a fee until they have a customer. We find that to be a very successful model. As I mentioned earlier, we were started using local government and school revenues, E-rate revenues through the USAC program to help further expand the network. And we've connected all of our industrial customers and a good portion of our commercial customers. And they don't have broadband challenges anymore. I mean, I'll tell one story. One of our largest employers back about 10 years ago was bonding T1s together. A T1 is 1.5 megabits. And they were bonding 3 T1s together. Today, that would be laughable because their needs are so much more now today than they were 10 years ago. We built fiber into their plant, and everything they do is in the cloud. So they cannot operate under their previous infrastructure. And we're always looking for ways of further expanding our fiber to home system. We eventually would like to have our entire electric service territory wired with fiber to the home and have every electric customer to have access to broadband services. Next slide, please. Currently, we have about 170 miles of backbone cable. I've highlighted one residential area. This is a residential area of about 1,200 homes. It's one of our original areas that we've deployed in. We use our substations as hubs. So they are hubs for our deployments. We have 17 substations throughout our territory. We've been very successful in keeping our electric and telecommunication priorities separate, but we've provided a good benefit to the community. Next slide, please. Some of our internal services that we've provided are smart grid. Currently, we have two-way communication to our electric meters. We have one-way communication to our water and gas meters, and that's by choice. We don't want to remotely close a water or gas meter. We want to do that in person, but we're able to do remote disconnects from our operations center. I was in our operations center last night. A call came in where a customer had paid their bill. The customer was able to be restored over the phone while talking to the operator within seconds. I was amazed. I hadn't been a part of a conversation like that, but they were connected. Their power was restored within seconds. So that was very impressive. So we look to further that smart grid communication, not only from the meter, but into the field where we can do switching, electric switching. When we have outages, we can restore service to some people that have been affected. Also, our customer portal, we're able to receive so much more information from our meters, time of use rates. We wouldn't be able to do time of use rates without broadband. Next slide. Traffic signal coordination is just another use. If you're going down a major corridor and you're going the speed limit, the lights should be coordinated to where you should be able to go through the corridor without being stopped. So the lights will be talking to each other and learning the patterns so they can better efficiently operate. That's been in place for about 8 years. Wireless access points, we have hotspots for our police department so they can connect to the city network and be in the field and doing reports instead of having come back to the police department. We have various hotspots around the city. Next slide, please. In our free Wi-Fi, what we call hot parks or hot Wi-Fi wireless zones, we have a number of city parks and pavilions. Our concert pavilion is in the background. Carrington Pavilion is fully covered with free internet. Our English Park, Dan Daniel Park, where we had a Danville Braves team that was fully covered in free internet. Our visitor center, Blue Park, and our entire Main Street downtown area is covered in free Wi-Fi. And next slide. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions. And again, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gray. Are there any questions from members of the board of?
I do, but I hate to be the only one asking questions.
Go right ahead, Mr. Krizek.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jason, that's impressive. Now I know where I want to retire to. I'm looking around Virginia. So you'll be ready for the casino? Wire that up?
We will.
My question is, so you mentioned 4,000 homes that you've connected. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And how many more homes do you have on your list? And what are you finding to be your cost per connection, if you will?
So our electric territory, we want to have access for all our customers in our electric territory. So we serve 42,000 electric customers, and we have a ways to go. We admit we have a ways to go, and it's a funding challenge to be able to get their average cost $1,800 per customer, and we're just gradually doing that 250 to 500 customers a year as revenue allows.
Madam Chair, this is Jimmy Carr. I got some questions if I can.
Go right ahead, sir.
So thanks for this presentation. I have a couple questions about the business model and the relationship between you and the ISPs. So you had a slide that showed a fiber backbone, I think in blue. And is that in the supply space or the communication space on the poles?
It is a dielectric cable, so it doesn't have any metal in it. And so as an electric utility, we're allowed to put it in the power space.
Okay, so it's ADSS. And then, so these passings, so So you all have your ADSS, it passes a location, and then who builds the drop? So is it the private ISP builds the service drop, or do you all build that?
We do. We put the drop to the home, and we put a Danville Utilities, what we call a tap box. And it's basically an interface box for the provider to connect into and wire into the home.
So you guys install all the way to the ONT, the service drop all the way to the ONT, and then the private provider, puts whatever router they want to have inside the home.
That's correct.
And then, so on the far end of that is the private ISP buying lit services from you at the terminal on the pole, or are they leasing fiber strands and tapping into them where they have an MST or some hybrid?
So we are provisioning services, predefined service package of, if they sign up for a 25 meg, 100 meg, 500 meg service, our staff is actually provisioning services to a particular port inside the home. We don't offer any dark fiber services. We offer only lit services.
Okay, and then so how do you price it? So it's up to one of the participating ISPs goes and finds the customer and says, hey, I need a service drop at this location. And then do you all do a percentage of revenue that you share with the ISP, or is it a straight monthly fee? And how does that work?
It's a percentage of their gross revenue for that service.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Any other questions? Any other questions from members? Hearing none. Dr. Holmes, if you'd like to move on to the next piece.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So the next thing we're going to do, first we want to thank all of our presenters for presenting this afternoon, and we will make the presentations available on the Broadband Advisory Council website, along with the minutes for people to look at. The next thing is I'm going to turn it over to Senator Boysko and Chandler to go ahead and start the public comment. We do have one person signed up right now for public comment, Chandler. And if anyone else would like to speak during the public comment period, you're more than welcome to put your name in the chat box. And Chandler, I'm going to turn it back over to you just to do roll call again for any council members that might have joined us a little late, and then we can go ahead and start the public comment period.
Sure thing, Tamara. So a couple folks that may have joined us throughout the meeting. Senator Hashmi.
I'm here.
Great. All right. And lastly, Senator Lewis. Senator Lewis, have you joined us? Okay. Senator Boysko, that leaves us down with public comment now. Are you okay if I kind of take us through who signed up for public comment?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Chandler.
Sure thing. So we have one person signed up in the comment box. If anybody else would like to, be in public comment, just had another one fly in. Please sign up in the comment box in Google Meet. The first person we had sign up is Dawn Meyer, Executive Director of the Loudoun Education Foundation.
Thank you, Chandler. As Chandler said, my name is Dawn Meyer. I live in Loudoun County. I am a former second grade teacher and the executive director of the Loudoun Education Foundation, also known as LEF. LEF is a nonprofit 501c3 based in Loudoun County that works on creating and supporting critical education programs. And one of the programs we are currently working on with Loudoun County Public Schools and Chesapeake Public Schools is the Virginia K-12 Computer Science Pipeline Project. We all know that computer science is integral to almost every industry, and public school systems and teachers must think about how best to prepare students for the digital world that we live in. The Virginia K-12 Computer Science Pipeline Project focuses on teaching computational thinking and computer science skills to students starting in elementary school through integration into core subjects like science, math, and English. In addition to that integration, we add computer science electives in middle school, like coding at the middle school and robotics. And then in high school, not only is there higher level CS electives, but also an experiential learning piece in which high school students can apply skills learned through internships. This model, the curriculum and lesson plans developed, will be shared with all public school systems and teachers in Virginia. I am worried that school systems that do not have broadband internet access will be at a disadvantage with this project. And I'm concerned about students that do not have access. So LEF started working on this project in March of 2020, right as the COVID-19 pandemic hit and schools shut down. School systems went from hands-on in-class learning to virtual or distance learning. They scrambled to purchase technology devices like Chromebooks and laptops for their students and struggled with the problem of many students not having access to high-speed internet at home or no access at all to the internet. According to the State Council on Higher Education's August report, more than 200,000 Virginia K-12 students and more than 60,000 Virginia college students currently lack broadband access at home. So the LEF, as well as other Virginia education foundations, were tasked with raising funds for hotspot devices for the many students who cannot access the internet from home, which we did. I was fortunate that I received a $150,000 grant from Google, and GDIT stepped in with $10,000. Once students received the hotspot devices, the challenge then became, where do the students have to drive so that they could access the internet? Would it be the parking lot of the public library, the parking lot of a McDonald's, or the parking lot of their high school? Some schools tried to set up internet cafes for their students. For the students who cannot legally drive yet, parents have to drive them, and that is during their work day to these locations. If this is occurring in Loudoun County, what is it like for students who live in more rural areas of Virginia? And I know that this issue is not limited to the rural areas. I know it's an issue too for the suburbs right outside of the urban areas in Virginia. COVID-19 is shining a light on the fact that there is a critical divide in Virginia of the haves and have-nots when it comes to broadband and internet access, and that it is causing an inequity in education that must be addressed as soon as possible. Whether you look at this from the perspective of preparing students with the computer science skills they need for current and future jobs in the digital world, or the struggle students face with trying to connect so that they can attend school or complete schoolwork virtually, internet access, broadband access is critical to public education. And there are so many areas in Virginia where broadband is unavailable. So really, I came here today to share with you that in order to address the inequity in education that is currently going on, and the pandemic really highlighting that, we really do need to look at broadband access. And I'm asking you to look at all options. Please don't limit it. I think it's great that the VITA funding is there, and I'm just asking you to allow and explore all options for that VITA funding. I just want to say thank you for letting me speak today and for the hard work I know that you're doing. And I know you're helping Virginia close this digital divide, and I really appreciate everything that you're doing.
Thank you so much, Ms. Meyer. I really appreciate your passion and commitment to our students and appreciate your comments. Do we have anyone else who has asked to speak from the public?
Yes, we have next signed up on the chat is Michael McAvoy, Chair of the Roanoke Valley Broadband Authority.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the commission. And Chandler, you got it close. It's McAvoy. But people butcher that all the time, so don't feel too bad about it. I am the chair of the Roanoke Valley Broadband Authority, and you heard earlier from our executive director, Frank Smith, on the incredible progress the Broadband Authority has made over the last few years in the Roanoke area. And as Frank talked about, this was really an initiative brought about by our community leaders, who business people, people in education, who just saw a need in our community for increased broadband. And you know, the VITA grants have been good, but you know, despite many years of focused attention and investment on trying to close this digital divide, we still have 700,000 Virginians without broadband access. And you know, many of those are in the western part of the state where I live. You know, we have been trying to develop a community solution that works with our incumbent providers and other partners to solve this divide, get internet access to as many customers as possible in our region. As Frank mentioned, we've installed you know, more than 100 miles of backbone fiber to be the basis for building off of. We have lots of opportunities in the rural areas of Botetourt County, Roanoke County, and also areas within the city of Roanoke. My wife is a teacher with the city schools, and she, like everyone else, has been struggling with the pandemic, trying to teach her students. The first quarter, it was all virtual. And I can't tell you how many times she would come home with stories about her kids not being able to get on the internet. You know, these are kids that live, you know, in the core of the city of Roanoke and just can't get access to broadband that's either fast enough to allow them to learn virtually, or they just can't afford it. And these kind of solutions are what a community municipal broadband authority can provide. You know, we're not investor owned. Our investors are our community, and we want to solve these community problems. So I would encourage you to allow the VITA process to be opened up to municipal providers. It really costs the Commonwealth nothing. You know, you still have to provide an application that meets the criteria. You know, it still has to be a worthwhile project. And so why not look at all the tools that are available? You know, why are we limited to just the incumbent providers who, quite frankly, haven't been doing the job anyway? They haven't been providing the services. If they had, we wouldn't be here today talking about the need to fund these fund projects. So with that, I appreciate the time and appreciate the opportunity to speak. And I would encourage you to look at all options with regard to solving this problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My understanding is that Chandler has a letter from
the town of Ashland.
The town of Ashland. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So I'll read the letter. Dear Senator Boysko and Delegate Tyler, on behalf of the Town Council of the Town of Ashland, we respectfully request that the Virginia Broadband Advisory Council consider the following revision to the Virginia Telecommunications Initiative as you conduct a review of the program as directed by the General Assembly. Authorize public broadband authorities and local governments to be the sole grant applicant. This would allow elected and appointed officials to be the driver of projects and maintain leverage with private sector partners to produce the best outcome for their constituents with taxpayer funds. The current private partnership requirement allow the private sector to focus applications on what will provide them the best return, not what is best for the community. The Commonwealth of Virginia has already experienced immense gains in reaching those unserved and underserved through previous iterations of VITA, and we believe those proposed revisions will allow an even greater return on investment for the taxpayers. We appreciate any consideration you give to this request, and I am happy to discuss any of these recommendations with you. Respectfully, Steve Tribbett, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments from the public that are hoping to be heard? Taking that as a no. I'm wondering if we have comments or remarks from any members of the Broadband Advisory Council. Does anybody have a comment or question? Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Senator.
Okay. And so nobody has any comments or questions at this point?
This is Delegate Creasy. I got to say that it's been a good, productive meeting, and I appreciate all the presentations. I've learned a lot, and there's a lot more reading and investigating to do, I guess. But it's interesting to see how different municipalities have been tackling this, perhaps. And I look forward to the next meeting where we can opine on how we move forward. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you. Any other members wish to make a comment or ask a question?
Senator Boysko, we do have one additional person in the comment box, Kevin McNulty, who'd like to comment on behalf of Cox Communications.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chandler, and thank you, Senator Boysko. I just, in response to Mr. McAvoy's comment, just wanted to make sure he was aware of everything that Cox is currently offering in the city of Roanoke. So we've actually partnered with Roanoke City Schools, and the schools are using CARES Act funding to pay for students to have broadband access if they currently lack that. And that's in addition to our Connect and Compete program, which is available to anyone that gets a government subsidy and is $9.95 per month. And we've actually opened that up to new customers they get 2 months free and then $9.95 thereafter. So we're definitely very acutely aware of issues in Roanoke and are focused on addressing them.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Other comments?
Madam Chairwoman, this is Evan. I would just like to, as people, I think we've heard some really good stuff today. As people consider what's been discussed and shared with us here, I do want to bring people back to kind of the framing of the problem that we've, and I think most broadband advocates and practitioners have hit upon, which is that really clear division of thinking between the access side of the problem, which is when there's infrastructure available, and the affordability side. It's really easy to conflate those two, particularly when you're trying to figure out, who's quote unquote unserved. And when you look at, for example, the SHEV figures come from surveys, but when you ask somebody, do you have broadband at home? It's very hard to tease out of that population that says no, who doesn't have broadband access because there's no infrastructure to serve them versus who doesn't have broadband access because they can't afford it. As we consider approaches to address the affordability side of the equation, which I and everybody else on the governor's team really supports, we want to remember that VITA is really a tool that's been developed over many years to solve the access problem, not the affordability problem. And so I think I would I don't think I'd be overstepping to say that I think Eric and Tamara would agree with me that we've really refined that program to do that thing really well. And if we want to do an affordability push, it would be best to establish a new program rather than try to shoehorn it into VITA, just as people consider kind of who we'd be serving with any changes, whether it's this change or other changes, as we head into a legislative session.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Evan. Are there other members of the council who would like to speak? And I am back online. My internet is working again. Do we have any other advisory council members who would like to make a comment?
Madam Chair, this is Ray Lemura.
Yes.
I would just like to share that we all are committed to resolving the problem of the unserved. That is the focus of what we have all been doing around the halls of the legislature for the past years. And I think VITA is an outstanding model. It's been recognized around the nation for its success. And it's technology agnostic and is moving the needle and significantly. So I think we're very proud of what has been accomplished with VITA. And we look forward to the information that will be coming forward for the next meeting.
Thank you. Other members of the council who would like to make a comment?
Senator Boysko, we do have a couple more folks in the comment box that are wishing to speak.
Okay. All righty.
The first one is Sherry Neal from the city of Portsmouth, stating that we agree with what has been said about opening up VITA funds to allow municipal authorities to reach the underserved and unserved portions of our jurisdiction. And then Jennifer Eddy also wishes to speak. So, Miss Eddy.
Okay, great. Thank you all for having me. I would like to speak not in my professional capacity, but as a mother of 3 who is trying to, keep a business running at the same time my children are remote learning this fall. This issue of unserved versus underserved is an important distinction, but I think at the end of the day, it loses sight of what our citizens are really struggling with. Right now, I have 2 children in kindergarten. I have one entering kindergarten and then 2 in elementary school in 2nd and 4th grade. When we live dead center in the city of Roanoke, we have Cox Communications, which works fine when just one of my husband or I wants to work from home. But when I have 2 children streaming their synchronous education through the public school system, they can't both be online at the same time, much less me and my husband be at home working while they're trying to work. We've reached out, we've tried to get help. It's not an issue of we don't have infrastructure in our neighborhood, but it really is an issue of the capacity that we have here isn't sufficient to do what we need to do. And so while I really, really appreciate everything that you guys are doing, and I certainly understand there are areas that need the infrastructure, we also can't get hung up on this and that. As a community and as a broadband advisory board, I really hope you'll look at how do we get all options on the table so we can have the best possible outcomes just as quickly as we can for all citizens. It's technology advancement that we need to keep up with, not who has what today, because what we're measuring is going to change tomorrow. What we need is infrastructure across the state that's going to serve everyone. And as a citizen, I really hope that we'll look at all options, will open up all options, and that those that are in charge of making the decisions will be looking at all of these issues holistically, because we think it's really, really important. I think it's really, really important. And my kids are getting frustrated at their screens. They think it's really important too. So thank you for the time, everyone. I really appreciate it. Not just today, but all the work that you're doing on this issue.
Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate that. So that concludes our public testimony, I understand. Are there members of the committee that wish to speak who have not already had a chance to say anything?
Madam Chair, it's Mike Kaiser with BARC.
Go ahead.
I've got a question. I guess it's directed at either Tamara or Evan. You know, I feel like after the RDOF auction concludes and we see where the awards are made, that it could be more difficult for DHCD to be able to make VITA awards with RDOF money going to a lot of areas in Virginia that are currently unserved. Do either of you feel that has any sort of bearing on the decision we're pondering right now regarding expanding VITA to municipalities?
This is Evan. I think RDOF is going to complicate things a lot. We knew that when we set up the VITA round this year, that this federal program was going to drop right in the middle of our grant evaluation cycle. I think most of you've heard, I think both of the major federal programs are really pretty horribly designed and are both, wasteful of money and don't actually accomplish what we'd like them to accomplish. Sorry, my cat is really interested in being on the desk right now. The question though of whether or not we'll be able to find VITA projects, I'm not too concerned about. There are plenty of folks who need help and still a ton of infrastructure left to build. And so, even under a situation in which we got just a ton of RDOF winners, there's still plenty to do for VITA. I also think it's worth remembering that, RDOF awards are not like VITA awards. So when you win the award, you don't get the money. The money comes in over a long period of time, and it may well be that we wind up determining that we're not going to operate on the federal government schedule, and that in next year's VITA round we may need to do some offering. We may need to change the rules so that we can accelerate those builds, whether it's different financing structures or different approaches. There's certainly a lot to do, and it's worth remembering that RDOF is still targeted toward the deeply flawed FCC maps, not the actual nature and extent of the unserved areas. And so, in many ways, the RDOF awards are going to make it a lot harder to get to universal coverage than if they didn't happen at all.
All right, Evan, thank you. That's the kind of feedback I was looking for.
Great. Are there other members who had questions or wanted to make comments? Okay. So one of the things, I have a few comments that I wanted to make. I think this has been a really productive conversation. I think what I've heard are concerns in a couple of different buckets. One is, should we open VITA grants for municipalities? And it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that in this conversation of whether or not we should open VITA grants up to municipalities without a private partner is the concerns around people who, like Ms. Eddy, who just talked, who has service, yet it's not enough for having 4 people on a Zoom call all at the same time. And so there's a capacity question. There seems to be an affordability question, and just overall a concern that this isn't happening fast enough. One thing that I think it's important that we remember is that VITA is created for building infrastructure that does not happen overnight in places that have absolutely no service whatsoever. And so I think what our task as the Broadband Advisory Council is does it serve the purpose to open that up to other people, other municipalities, to change the requirements brought forward? I think it's important that we look at the financial viability of each and every applicant, and I think that should stay the same. But I don't know that we're going to solve the capacity issue with VITA grants alone. And I think that what Evan said was that there really is probably a whole nother issue that we need to look at, not looking at VITA grants, but at other resources to try to fill the entire need of the members of the community throughout the Commonwealth. And I'm just wondering from you all where we want to go next. I mean, in our next meeting, we will be making some decisions. What further information do we need to have in front of us before we start making those determinations?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I think one of the first things we need to do is figure out how to define underserved, because I think that we are trying to see if new people want to jump in this pool, and what is the criteria by which they may be invited in. And I think the first is trying to figure out what exactly do these stakeholders mean by underserved. It's not in our code anywhere. Is it statutorily defined in any other way, in any other government? Something that will give us a way of kind of figuring out what underserved means, because I think there's also a difference from what the capacity may be from that ISP versus what is actually the purchase plan or the agreed upon speed, with that customer. So they may be underserved out of a choice or out of a default preference, and they may need to upgrade to a different plan. And these are all things that are difficult to try and ascertain, which I think means that we have, again, something that I just want to underscore for the council. $80 million, hopefully in a couple of years, to be able to go toward what has already been requested for 1 year, $100 million worth of projects for unserved, which is trying to go after the governor's main mission of making sure that we can, and what I think should be our main mission, which is to try and help facilitate universal coverage. But if we want to open it to underserved and not just unserved, how do we define that, Madam Chair? I think is the main issue that I'm wrestling with.
Thank you. I think that's a good question. Other members of the council who want to chime in or give your thoughts? So
this is Delegate Krizak.
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, are we trying to kind of also decide a little bit of what the agenda may look like in December?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's important that we.
Yeah, and I need to ruminate a little bit on what we've heard today, but maybe we can have in the beginning of the meeting, we could kind of go over all the options and all the different models that are out there. And we heard some real different approaches, but also I think it's really also somewhat of a get back to the cost benefit analysis too. We're talking about $100 million worth of applications. I'd like to learn a little bit more about, and we started with that, with the application process and some of the challenges to it, and maybe a little bit more on the typical application, the typical project, the time it takes. Maybe we should spend a little bit more about what we've been doing with VITA in the last 3-4 years or something like that. Some of our bigger accomplishments, some of our failures, maybe would be good to look at too. We can learn from that. But I think maybe that would be somewhat helpful. Otherwise, I think we have a lot of homework to do.
Thank you very much. Other members of the council?
Madam Chair, this is Ray. I guess I want to express, I think the council's focus, I would really be in favor of maintaining the focus on the unserved. That is the priority. Those folks who have access to nothing. Individual companies and localities are trying to solve the affordability programs and initiatives. And if there are households who may not have updated routers, that may be other issues that folks in households may need to look at. But the priority of the unserved, it truly is critical and has been the focus of what VITA has been about and what the legislature has been about and what we are trying to achieve as a Commonwealth to get all connected. Thank you.
Thank you.
Evan? This is Delegate Tyler.
Go ahead, Delegate.
Thank you, Senator. I just like to agree with the gentleman who just spoke because in a lot of areas of the Commonwealth, especially here in Southside Virginia, we are one of those underserved areas where internet accessibility is almost obsolete. And if we can get coverage to those particular vicinities, I agree that areas have capacity issues, but the underserved areas have to get some kind of internet connection in order to continue, especially when we're talking about educating our children. I think that's so important. But I also have a question. Do we have a map that's available or some kind of sketching that shows where in Virginia our underserved areas are located?
Tamara, do you want to take that or Evan?
Let me take it because I can just be a little meaner than I think Tamara would be. No, Madam Chair and Delegate Tyler, we do not have a good map. And the reason for that is that the FCC permits telecommunications carriers to report their coverage by census block. So if you have a single address in a census block, which can get pretty darn big when you get out into the less dense areas, they get to claim that entire census block is served. And so that has really screwed up our mapping efforts. The VITA team has found a way to get around that, and that's the challenge process that Tamara outlined at the beginning of the meeting, which is to say, you basically you draw your project area as large as you think you need, and then you give the ISPs the opportunity to back out the areas that they actually have network in, which is not as efficient as simply getting the data from the ISPs. And there are some efforts at the federal level to repair that, led in fact by two Virginia members of Congress, both Congresswoman Spanberger and Congressman Whitman. But no, right now there's not a great map. There is a map that we've hosted that Virginia Tech, in collaboration with previously CIT and now DHCD, has put together. But we just want to be really, really, really clear that on that map, if it shows an area as unserved, it probably is. It almost certainly is. But there are many areas that map will show as served that are not in fact served.
And just to piggyback on Evan, just to give you an update, we are working with Virginia Tech to rebrand the state broadband map so that the map will be a little more user-friendly to help communities develop future VITA projects or projects looking for other state or federal funding. So as Evan eloquently said, yes, the map is not as good as we'd like it to be right now, but we are working with it. But of course, we're using the FCC data, which, as Evan said earlier, does overstate coverage currently. So we're working on it. And the FCC, just to be fairly transparent, did put out for public comment on ways to improve that data set. We're not quite sure where they will land in terms of improving the data set moving forward, but we have staff that are steadily paying close attention to what's going on at the federal level with the data collection. And we are working very closely with our partners at Virginia Tech to rebrand our broadband map.
Thank you. Other members of the committee wishing to make comment or ask questions before we?
Yeah, Madam Chair, this is Jimmy Carr again. I feel like the delegate being concerned about taking too much time, but if we're going to be asked, to provide some comment on or an opinion on expanding the pool of VITA applicants, to me that's fundamentally a financial decision. And I remember a couple years ago we spent almost an entire meeting taking a look at what a number of the authorities around the Commonwealth have been up to, and I think we have 3 or 4 now that are pretty mature. We heard from Roanoke today. I know that Eastern Shore has a fairly active one. I know that there's the Wired Road, and we learned a lot about Culpeper today. And I hate to create more homework for anyone, but Roanoke mentioned today that they have their financial statements are posted on their website. I assume that financial information about these other authorities is available. And I think if we're talking about expanding the pool in a way that provides financial support to some of these entities, it would be helpful to have some more financial information about them so we could think about how to structure the program to support those entities. And so if somebody could gather just some more, and I assume many of these entities, if they have debt, they probably have audited financial statements. If someone could gather and distribute that in advance of the meeting, I think that would be very helpful.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Hopefully we can get that to the entire Broadband Advisory Council before the next meeting. I think that we have a lot of homework in front of us. I think for the public, it's important that we really keep in mind there are different issues here. One is infrastructure, building capacity for infrastructure throughout the Commonwealth where there is no current service. And that has been the mission of the VITA program, which started off at just $1 million only a few years ago that we had to work with, to now quite a robust amount of money, $85 million. Even with that amount of money, we still don't have enough to fill all of the requests that have come in for this round of applications. And so it's going to be really important that we are very thoughtful about our next steps. But again, I know that there are other issues outstanding, and we are the body here that is supposed to give advice to the governor. And so we want to, parse that out. If there are other legislative or executive efforts that need to take place, we need to identify those and think through them. one, I don't want to have to choose a winner and a loser and gut the VITA program because we know that we don't have service universal yet, and that is the mission of that program. So I think we have a lot of homework to do over the next month. We're going to be meeting again on December the 4th, and hopefully we will have some decisions made by the end of that meeting so that we can move forward legislatively if that's what we choose to do. But I want to make sure that we're doing that really thoughtfully and with all the facts on the ground. And I want to thank you all for your time. And again, I apologize for dropping off and thank the technicians who came and fixed it in the town of Herndon so quickly. It's good to have you all as partners. And with that, I will see if anyone would like to move to adjourn the meeting until next month.
So moved.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Excuse me. Before we adjourn, this is Bettina Ring.
Yes.
And I would just like to quickly say, well, first, I appreciate the fact that both you and Evan have cats that like to join the Zoom meetings as well. I've been having that issue myself, but it's nice to see our pets appear from time to time. But I just wanted to take a moment before we close to congratulate Chandler Vaughn. Chandler was one of our governor's fellows. He was fantastic to work with. In fact, if Christy is still on the line from the Rural Center, she was able to, after he completed grad school, to get him engaged in the work that the Rural Center was doing. And this is Chandler's going to be a great asset to our work. And so it's just great to see him on the call. And we look forward to working with him in his new capacity.
Thanks, Secretary Ring. I've had some good bosses in my time in state government. So looking forward to Tamara now as well.
Chandler, we are really happy to have you on board.
And Madam Chair, I'd like to add in Secretary Ring, just to comment there. She's absolutely correct. Chandler's a fantastic addition. And if we had to lose him, it's a good thing we kept him in the family of DHCD. So really happy for him and looking forward to working with him in this capacity. So thank you.
That's wonderful. I want to thank Michael Culp and Frank Smith and Jason Gray for joining us today to share a little bit about their municipal programs, and for all of you who jumped on the call. It is really good to have this conversation. And again, I will call. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion that we adjourn until December 3rd.
December 4th.
Oh,
Second.
December 4th.
Great. Thank you so much. Everybody have a happy Thanksgiving if we don't see you again.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all so much.
Be safe.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.